The NBA Gambling Podcast and the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Nordic Fantasy. Sign up promo code NBSGPN to get 50% deposit bonus of up to $1,000. Also brought to you by Rhythm. Start crushing college football and the NFL with Rhythm. Get your 7-day free trial all the day by going to sportsgambling.com/RATHMM. And welcome, everybody, to the NBA Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is currently Thursday afternoon or evening, roughly 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time on October 10th. I'm your host of the episode, Scott Reichel. Once again, joined by Lonte Smith. We're going to continue our actual division previews for the upcoming season. We went through a couple already. Now it's time to continue with the Central Division. If you are trying to think of that division in your head, that's the Bucks division to make it easier for you. Point is, though, Lonte is here to join me. Lonte, I know we got some playoff baseball coming up later, WNBA Finals as well, but we're here trying to help kill some time before then. How's it going with you?
Pretty good, man. It's a good time to be a sports fan, especially if you are, a fan of the New York teams. Got two big games tonight, so
At the same
man,
time,
I'm looking. That's the brutal part about it. But yeah, one New York team already got a win, so they're just kind of in wait and see approach. But man, I'm looking forward to the basketball season. With baseball kind of in their rear view, we got a couple more series left in the World Series. So I'm looking forward to the Central Division, which has been not so much competitive over the last half decade.
well, it depends how you look at it. That'll segue us briefly into the recap of last year's division, because even though Milwaukee did win the division again, they only won by one game. So it wasn't like they ran through it. Milwaukee tends to win this division every year, or at least since Giannis became a superstar. But last year was actually competitive, more so than usual. Cleveland trailed by one game. That came down to the final game of the regular season. You ended up seeing the Pacers lose by 2 games. So 3 teams hung in there, which should result in a pretty competitive overall division once again. I'll get into the win totals for each team in a second, but the top 3 teams in this division are separated by 4 wins. So you are expecting a pretty close, I'd say, battle to the end for the division, unless one team explodes early and just carries it out, or one of the other teams potentially falls apart. But we are expecting a pretty competitive division, a division which should be fun. And we, of course, have a lot of young talent in this division. Couple of teams that should be bottom feeders. We'll get to those in a second, too. But do want to ask you, from last year's overall takeaway for this division, we saw Milwaukee, Cleveland, and Indiana make the playoffs. And we, of course, saw Indiana make it the furthest, as we saw Cleveland lose in the second round to Boston, saw Milwaukee lose in the first round to Indiana, and we saw Indiana lose in a sweep into the conference finals. Can't believe it was a sweep when you think about the series, to Boston, because every game was competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to ask you quickly, going into this division, are there any storylines that you're kind of looking forward to for the upcoming season in the Central?
We can start with the biggest question biggest thing that I'm looking forward to is actually seeing what the Pistons can do. I know we'll get into them later, but they got a new coach. They got some veterans on the team. They got a bunch of talent on the team. So I think they can revert back to that 2021 where they were covering all those games in the second half. I think it was 2021. Yeah, I think it was 2021. It was right after COVID, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I'm looking forward to watching that. I'm also looking forward to the Bucks being able to kind of rebound. I mean, you would think by this, the talk in the offseason and after their playoff exit that they went, like 42-42 or 40-42. But I mean, they still perform well despite all the turmoil that they had going on. So yeah, this is probably going to be, I would say, one of the most competitive divisions that we have. Although I'm higher on the Bucks than every team in here, but I think it'll be competitive. Bunch of talent, deep teams. I think these are, four. I think got 4 of the deeper teams in the NBA in this conference with the collection of players that they have, 1 through 11. So yeah, man, I think it's a bunch of storylines for the Central. I do think. I mean, just a spoiler alert. I think the Bucks kind of run away with it in the end if everything's healthy. But I think we'll see some competitive balance here in that middle tier.
Yeah, so without trying to spoil my overall thoughts on the division, I think my main storyline actually involves the Pacers, because they made a great run. We saw how good they looked. Yes, Milwaukee did have some injuries. We obviously know what happened in that series, but the point is Indiana got through, made a very deep run, and Mathurin barely played in that entire playoff run. So I am wondering if Indiana is going to be able to duplicate what they did, or I should say build off of what happened in the playoffs from a confidence perspective, and maybe give this division a run. That's my main storyline. Milwaukee, of course, is the main piece of I don't want to say uncertainty, but the main piece of memes in this division, because you have Doc Rivers and Damian Lillard and Giannis, and the last year was kind of a season from hell. So we'll see how that works. Doc Rivers' expectations, what can possibly go wrong? So I'll get into that in a little while. Point is, though, my main storyline's Indiana. I think we know what Cleveland is. We've seen it for a couple of years. We saw them losing the playoffs. Not anybody's fault. We just saw Boston be much better than them, and then ended up losing. For the Bucks, once again, they have expectations. We'll see what happens. I'll get into that in the episode and once we cover through some of the other teams. But Indiana's my main storyline. I do want to know how far a team can go when you punt defense half the time. And apparently the answer is the conference finals. Apparently. So I don't know if that's sustainable or not. That's kind of my main storyline, and we'll see what happens moving forward. But before we get into the actual preview for the division, do you want to remind me once again that we are currently doing a fundraiser with SGPN because Hurricane Helene has been devastating to the people of Western North Carolina. SGPN has been teaming up with a local charity, mountainprojects.org, to help give back. Biggest donation will get a guest spot on the College Football Pick Show and a ton of gear. Go to mountainprojects.org, hit flood support, help out today. Thank you in advance. Plus a reminder, thank you for tuning in to the NBA Gambling Podcast, but we also could use a bit of a favor. Please head over to Spotify and leave us a 5-star rating and a review. Only you can prevent corporate gambling from taking over. Anyway, time to start off with the division preview. Starting off with the first team, the team that was the funniest team last year, team that was the worst team we've seen in a while, the Pistons with Monty Williams, who's no longer employed. Instead, the Pistons actually hired a coach that was fired by a division rival as they brought in Bickerstaff as their new head coach. So we'll see how Bickerstaff does with this team. Do want to point out their division odds are 400-1. In other words, try to buy a Powerball ticket instead of betting them to win the division. For the win total, you have around 25.5. Make, miss playoffs. Make is plus 1,100. Miss is minus 2,500. For the actual lineup, you're looking at the expectation of Cade, Ivy, Beasley, Tobias Harris, the new acquisition, and Jalen Duren. For the bench, you have Sasser, you have Asar Thompson, you have Fontecchio, who I thought was pretty solid last year, Isaiah Stewart, and you have B-Ball Reed, Paul Reed, who's now on the team. Besides that, you have Tim Hardaway Jr., and going down the line, you have a couple other guys who maybe can contribute, but that's basically it. So they also drafted Ron Holland. I can't forget about Ron Holland. So point is, Detroit is not supposed to be good, but they hit rock bottom with Monty. There is no Killian Hayes. So Detroit's fans are just thrilled he's not on the team anymore. He's on my Nets. I'm not going to talk about that. Point is, though, for the Pistons, you said you think this team might be better than expected. Probably not good, but I'm going to ask you, what is your initial thoughts on the roster, the coaching change, and how you think the season plays out for Detroit?
Yeah, coaching change I thought was much needed. I mean, I don't think Monty was there to kind of build it for the long haul, while JB, I think, is a better suited for this group. I mean, you saw some of the things that Monty was doing as far as the lineup. I mean, he wasn't playing his best players. It didn't help that Cade and Duren, two of his best players, kind of missed a little bit of time here and there.
For the record, I will never be allowed to criticize Monty Williams because I won a Coach of the Year bet on him with Phoenix like 3-4 years ago. So he made me a lot of money, so I can't criticize him. But last year was not a good one for Monty Williams.
Yeah, but I do like the additions. You mentioned Tim Hardaway, Malik Beasley, Tobias Harris, Paul Reed, Ron Holland. Going to be a decent, I guess, kind of gadget type of player. But the thing is, they didn't really hit on their weaknesses, which is shooting, outside shooting. I mean, Tim Hardaway is streaky, Malik Beasley streaky, Tobias Harris. I mean, maybe he'll be a little bit more comfortable being I guess he's a second option to Cade. I would think so. Maybe he feels that void a little bit better. I mean, he did have one of his best seasons in his career when he was in Detroit. Obviously, different circumstances, a little bit younger in age, but yeah, I mean, they didn't, hit on any of the shooting, which I would like. I mean, I think the lineup is a little bit clogged up as far as who you can play with who, because you can't really play a lot of these guys together because they can't shoot. So I would not expect to see a lineup of, let's say, Asar, Ron Holland, whoever the point guard. Like I just
to be clear, there are some guys that can shoot, and there are some guys that really can't shoot. Asar right now can really not shoot.
Yeah. So, I mean, I love Asar. I love him.
I
And
love him as a player, and I
Ahmed.
love his energy,
Yeah.
and his rebounding's great, but
Yeah.
he is really limited offensively, and I'm being
Yeah, I
pretty
feel like they
technical.
got a lot of guys like that, which is their issue. So I think they're gonna have to weed through that. Maybe make some trades and get a little bit bigger on the wings as well. I think their wing depth is a little bit in doubt because if you're looking at their depth, you're going to go with Tobias, Ron Holland. I guess if you want to count, Asar as a wing, I think he's more of a guard. But yeah, I just think that they need a little bit more wing depth. How healthy can Cade get? I mean, he's proven that he's been able to perform at a high level in certain stretches, but got to stay healthy. 62 games last year. Duran is a monster, double machine. So I like him. I like the addition of Reed to kind of back him up. If Sasser can take the next step and kind of play point guard and make Cade have to not have the ball in his hands as much, I think that's a positive. But overall, man, I think a win total is just like kind of about right. I'm expecting them to cover a lot of numbers, a lot of big numbers, because obviously we know that's what they're going to be getting on a night in, night out basis. So I think they'll be competitive. Maybe the record won't show it, but I think they'll be much improved from last season, just off sheer coaching and JB kind of knowing how to implement and work with younger guys. I mean, we saw it in Cleveland what he was able to do even prior to Mitchell being there. So, and he's worked with two bigs. So, he's got Paul Reed and Duran. Maybe we see some of those lineups together. So yeah, I'm looking forward to watching them. I'm looking forward to betting on them as big dogs. As far as the win total, I would probably lean slightly over, but I wouldn't bet it. But I think it's about right.
Yeah, I said the same thing in the Atlantic Division when it came to two teams, Toronto and the Nets, that with a sweepstakes like this that we have in the upcoming draft,
Oh yeah,
if you think teams are going to be last place teams in their divisions, the last couple of months are going to be ugly if you have overs for their win total, because they are probably going to end up punting. And I'm looking at Detroit quickly. Want to pull up their draft pick, I should say, list that they have for the next couple seasons out of curiosity. I'm sure they have their own pick. I don't know why they wouldn't have their own pick. So that's not really a concern there. Detroit does have they do not have their first pick.
Oh, they don't.
According to this, they don't.
Who did they trade?
That's a great question.
Because didn't they get a pick back for Bogdanovich?
I'm just going through all the sources I have. No, okay, so just to be clear, they have their own pick, but it's 1 through 13 protected. That's why it wasn't listed. So technically, they have it, and they will have it if they finish bottom 13, which gives you extra incentive to not care. So anytime you have some type of a lottery protection, but you still have your own pick, but it could go somewhere else, you're incentivized to lose. So Detroit will be a bottom 13 team in the league this season. The question is, how bad are they going to be? I'll go with the under on the wins here. Cade's had some injuries, of course, not to the same extreme that he's had for maybe a year or two, but he has been a bit injured. We have seen Ivy kind of struggle to find his role on this team, mainly because Monty had no idea what to do with him for the entire time that he was there. Malik Beasley, like for three-point shooting. Is he a good defensive player? No. Tobias Harris will be great on this team. He's going to be an empty stats guy on a team that's not going to be any good, so I'll put up some numbers. And Duran, I like a lot. He had some injury issues, but he's a very good double-double guy. So I think Reed will be fine off the bench. I like Isaiah Stewart with the bench unit. I think he'll be good. Fontecchio threes might be worth a look in the upcoming season. And Sasser's kind of fearless, so maybe that'll give them a decent bench. Hardaway Jr., I think, will also be a good member of that bench. So I think the bench unit could be okay. The starters, I'm not really scared of at all. I think that Cade will be fine. I think Cade's a bit overrated, to be honest, but I think that he's still a solid player. Tough to fully evaluate when you've had no supporting cast and no coaching help at all for your entire career. But I think that Cade is viewed a bit higher than what I've seen him show in his NBA career, but I think he's still solid. Ivy, I like. I think it's a bad situation for him. I think Duran's good, but I don't really like this team, and I think there's an incentive, once again, to be bad. So I'll go with the under. I think Detroit will be close. I'll give them 23 wins. I think they'll finish somewhere in the 23-24 win camp. So I'll go under, but it's mainly based on a lot of teams trying to tank for Cooper Flag. You have any thoughts on the win total, over or under?
Yeah, I would lean slightly over, but you kind of convinced me about that. That condition, the pick, the lottery pick being protected. So yeah, I can kind of see them being at like 22, 23
and then they're just going to pull
having some momentum
for the last month.
Yeah, I can kind of see that. But yeah, I do agree. They're gonna be. I think they'll be improved. The record might not say so, but we'll see them being more competitive on a night in, night out basis.
That might be my move, honestly. I probably would not take the under 25.5 right now. This team might be decent to start. Like, they're not going to
Yeah, I think so.
embarrass themselves out there. You
Yeah.
might be able to buy an extra couple wins if you wait maybe a couple weeks. You might get an updated win total of like 27.5, 26.5, and maybe you can buy yourself some extra leeway. But I see this team tanking at the end of the year. So I am going to go with the under on them. Before we get into the next team, which is going to be the Bulls, by the way, before we get into the next team, do you want to remind me once again that we have a lot of great options for you on Underdog Fantasy because they have one of the biggest menus on their pick'em, and they have the NFL, college football, MLB, MMA, WNBA, NBA, of course, NASCAR, and more. And they also have a lobby that's jam-packed with profit boosts. You can have specials and boosts on Arflex entries. I'll probably do something for the I don't have enough time for the Thursday night game, actually. So I am going to go with the Monday night game. Give me Bass higher 1.5 field goals in that Bills and Jets game. A reminder, though, when you sign up for your new account, use the promo code NBSGPN. Look at your special getting first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 bonus cash on fantasy promo code NBASGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the NBA Gambling Podcast. Just finished previewing the first team for the Central Division, the Pistons. Time to move on to a play-in team last year that got a lot worse during the offseason with the Chicago Bulls. Their division odds are currently 250 to 1. Their win total is 28.5, and their make-miss playoffs. Make is plus 700. The miss is minus 1,200. Last year, this team made the play-in. We saw them actually win a play-in game and then got buried by Miami. But for the actual wins, they finished with 39 last year, and now their win total is about 11 lower than that. Now you're looking at their starting lineup. Main news, they traded away Caruso and got back Josh Giddey. So you have Giddey at the point guard spot. You have Kobe White, who I think should have won Most Improved last year. I thought he was fantastic, but they gave it to a guy that I thought was good, but I think we'd agree based on the spirit of the award, Kobe White should have won Most Improved. Do we agree on that?
Definitely agree. Definitely.
So he's there in the starting lineup. You have Levine, who's still there, but only because nobody actually wants him. You have Patrick Williams at the power forward spot, who's always injured, but he's the power forward, and I believe they paid him a decent amount of money, and I don't know why. And they got Vucevic, who none of the Bulls fans actually like, but he's still there at the starting center spot. For the bench, you have Dosunmu, who I think most people like. They have Terry. They have their first-round pick, Buzalis, who I actually thought looked pretty good in the Summer League. Torrey Craig, and you have Jalen Smith. You also have Lonzo, who might play some preseason. I don't know if he's going to play this season, but we'll see what happens. Nice to see him actually step foot on a court. Javon Carter, Duarte, and they have Sonego. And that's basically it. Shout out to Taylor Horton-Tucker, though, who's on this roster. And they have Kenneth Lofton, who was the very fun player who was pretty good on the Grizzlies G League team. But going through the actual roster, we're expecting this team to be bad. Having said that, Chicago really never seems to bottom out. It seems to always be a team that finishes around the play-in. They did lose DeRozan, who was their main piece offensively, but they still have Levine, who's back from injury. So I'm going to ask you, 28.5, what are your thoughts on the Bulls?
Yeah, I think this is probably one of the harder teams to kind of evaluate.
I will not be betting this, I agree, but I have to at least ask you.
Yeah, I mean, they're the definition of average, like from last year, just metric for the past few years, just average metrics. They don't shoot a lot of threes. They're not really analytically driven. I thought that they probably would switch up the coaches, but maybe that would come next year. I'm expecting this year they'll probably bottom out after closer to the All-Star break and trade deadline. I think they'll try to get rid of Levine and take 3 cents on the dollar for Levine and then Vucevic and try to get rid of a lot of those guys, and maybe Kobe White goes down with an injury, and they just have to play the young guys and fight for a top 2, top 3 pick. I think this coming up draft, the next few drafts for the next 3 or 4 years are going to be really good. So yeah, I like Buzelis. Buzelis is a really good pick for Rookie of the Year in my opinion, because I think he'll be getting a lot more time after they get rid of those older guys on the roster, like Vucevic and Levine. Not really a big fan of Patrick Williams. I think Giddey actually works better here than he did in OKC because he's able to play the 1 and he's not being relied on to kind of shoot the ball.
Just to be clear, it's not a fair comparison to Lonzo because Lonzo was so much better defensively. But you can argue there are some similarities in what Giddey can do with the ball in his hands to what Lonzo did with this team a couple of years ago when he was healthy. Now, defensively, Lonzo's a lot better. I'm not going to pretend Giddey's a good defensive player. But when it comes to a selflessness and a guy that can get other guys open, I think Giddey can open up a lot of things for this offense.
Yeah, and if Lonzo can step on the court, then they got two decision makers, and you got Kobe White to kind of score. And I think Lonzo's improved his jump shot pretty immensely since leaving the Lakers. So obviously, you don't know how much or if any he's going to be able to give you. But I mean, I'm just happy to see him on the court again, or get ready to see him on the court again. So I would lean under. I just think this is the year that they bottom out and go, maybe 24, 25-ish wins. I think they got a decent amount of talent, no wing depth at all. Like you just named out those guys. How many wings did you name? Like Patrick Williams, that's it?
I'll tell you what. You mean good wings or wings on the roster?
No, just wings on the roster. Like, I mean, Patrick Williams is probably only going to play like 45, 50 games. And I don't think he's good anymore. I think he's overrated.
Do you count Torrey Craig as a wing?
I mean, I guess, what is he, 6'6", 6'7"? Yeah,
I think he's a little bit shorter than that, but you can argue that it's close. Let me just see what Torrey.
He got Meg Thee Stallion, so he's a winner in my book.
That's fair. That once again, I don't know if that counts as a wing, but that works, I guess.
Yeah, they just don't have any wings. I mean, they're really guard oriented, and once they play those bigger teams, that the East has a lot of deep wing depth in that conference. So I'm not sure how much they'll match up, and especially what are they going to do when. I guess they're relying on a lot on Buzelis, which I think is a good thing because I think he can play. It's pretty much just a lot. Like, look at all those guards. They got Carter, White, Giddey, Lonzo. I guess if you want to throw Craig as like a tweener guard wing or whatever. Desumu, like those are six of their players, all guards, and a Levine, that's 7. Like, so they just got a lot of the same stuff. And I think they bottom out this year. I think they fired a coach at the end of the year, maybe middle of the year. And they go 24, 25 wins. Yeah.
But by the way, I mentioned the actual Craig height. He's 6'5". For Matas, he is 6'10". So
yeah,
he
Matas,
can
Matas
be.
is good.
I was going to say, I think he's solid. I like what I saw in Summer League. Now, when it comes to Dark Horse Rookie of the Year candidates,
I like him.
You can make an argument.
Yeah,
now, I'm not saying he's going to start, which is a problem because you kind of want your Rookie of the Year guys to start. But when you're talking about upside and guys that can be immediate contributors for a team that's not really going to care much about anything, I'm not sure if we like how the Hawks are going to look for the upcoming season. I know that the number 1 overall pick had a pretty good game. I believe it was a day or two ago where he actually looked pretty solid, but he's mostly a 3-point spot-up shooter, which is going to be very streaky. The argument is if the Bulls start potentially like tanking early and you give the young rookie some playing time, I think Montes could actually make a run for Rookie of the Year. I think he's talented. I think he's a very interesting prospect who can maybe blossom, and I think he can maybe make some noise. So I don't mind him maybe for Rookie of the Year shot because anybody could win it for the upcoming season. For the Bulls, though, I was trying to find out their future first-round picks. Looking at the Bulls, they do have their own first-round pick, protected 1 through 14 from, actually, no, that's not their own. That's from Portland. So I got to actually, it really comes down to source. One source telling me one thing, another source are telling me some other things. I got to see what they have. So for their draft picks, I don't see them having their own draft pick for this season.
They should have a decent amount of draft picks. I mean, they got rid of DeRozan, and they're probably going to get some more when they trade Levine and Vucevic. I mean, obviously probably not first, but Bill's
is telling me that their own picks top 10 to 12 protected. I'm looking through everything. I don't see anything for the Bulls. So I'm trying to quickly pull this up. Okay, so their own pick. Yeah, okay. So I found one reliable source. The others aren't. So the Bulls have their own pick 1 to 10. So they have to be bad. They have to be bad. If they are not going to be bad, then their pick 11 to 30 goes to San Antonio, and 15 through 30 goes to Portland. So the point is, or I should say Portland's is 15 to 30. So they are in possession of their own pick if it's 1 through 10. So yes, they kind of have to be bad. Do you think the Bulls tank properly, or are they too dumb to tank?
I mean, honestly, I don't think they'll have to. I just think they just don't have enough talent to compete. And then if you mix that with, playing, relying on the younger guys, to seeing what you have in Terry, seeing what you have in Buzelis and some of those younger guys, I mean, I don't think they have to do much. I think they just have to roll the ball out and maybe get, cut Kobe White's minutes in half because he's a definite baller.
He's a guy. He's also had some injury issues. He might sit for like a month.
Yeah, so I don't think they'll have to tank. But I just don't think they're good enough to win enough games to be. I would think they're comfortably a bottom 7-8 team in the league, like comfortable. I'm comfortable saying that right now without even having them go through all that. Yeah.
Yeah, to read off the Rookie of the Year odds, by the way, Edie is the favorite at around 4-1, 5-1. Reed Shepard's around 650. You have Ricochet, who is third, number one overall pick, who's around 8 or 9-1. SAR's at 10-1. Good luck with that one. You have Castle at around 10-1 as well. And then you get to our guy. You get to Boozelis, who's around 10-1. So if they want to go for Matas and you think this team's tanking, I don't mind Rookie of the Year on a 6'10 guy with upside. So I think that could be worth something as a bright spot on what should be a bad season. But 1-10 protected. Shout out to Bills for bringing it up. They have to tank. I'll go under. I think they finish with probably around 25 wins, maybe a little bit lower than that. But yeah, I see this team being bad. So anything else you want to add?
No, I think we pretty much summed it up.
Cool. I'm moving on to the next team. A good team, actually. The Pacers, who have a win total of 46.5. The division odds are plus 390. You're looking at the make-miss playoffs. Make is minus 600, and miss is plus 425. For the actual starting lineup, you have Halliburton, you have Nembhard, you have Nesmith, Siakam, and Turner. For the bench, you have McConnell, you have Shepard, Mathurin, you have Toppin, and Isaiah Jackson, who I actually like quite a bit. You also have the enforcer. They brought in James Johnson in case somebody accidentally punches Halliburton to beat somebody up. You have Jarris Walker, who was the first pick for them about a year ago or so, who didn't really play much last year, but I think he has some upside. They got Wiseman for jokes as a depth center. They also got Johnny
Furphy.
I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation.
Furphy?
Yeah, how do you pronounce that?
Furphy.
Burbfee?
No, just like Murphy, but just
Furphy.
Yeah,
just Furphy. Okay. So he was a Kansas guy who can shoot a bit, so we'll see if he contributes at all. Basically it. So once again, I think the roster's pretty good. Their bench is solid. That was the way they beat the Knicks, was the bench being overall just a solid overall unit. But McConnell is a great backup point guard. Shepard was good last year. Mathurin got injured. We know what his upside can be.
Yeah.
Toppin, I thought, was actually really good with this team. And I thought that he flamed out in New York, but he was very good with this overall core. And Jackson I like as an energy center off the bench. I don't think Wiseman's going to play that much. I think Walker could be interesting. And I think that Furphy can be an okay three-point shooter. For this team, though, we said we think the bottom two teams will be bad in this division. I brought up Indiana. Maybe they can build up what happened last year. I like the over on their wins. Last year, they ended up getting to 47. Why would I think this team would be worse? I think this team might build off of what happened last year in the playoffs and kind of use that confidence to finish with 50 wins. I think they can reach 50. I'll go with the over. I think they went over last year, and this total feels a bit low. I'll go with the over on this team.
Yeah, I'm leaning over as well. I think by far, not even just off the top of my head, they're literally the deepest team 1 through 15. I think the guys that can actually play and contribute, I think every player on their team can contribute. I mean, they played like 9-10 guys in playoff games. And that was without Mathurin. So just he's like the 11th guy. They didn't play the rookie. Man, they just got so many guys, so many different ways to win. I love Rick Carlisle as a coach. Obviously, the offense is going to be their second in offensive rating last year, 23rd in defensive rating. So if they can bring that up to be about average, which they get a full season with Siakam, a full off season to kind of implement him. He's been the anchor on the defensive end. I think he'll be fine. Miles Turner also protecting the rim. So I think they were better defensively in the playoffs than the numbers indicated. I think they can build on that as well. Mathurin's I would say he's a decent defender on the wing, on the perimeter. So yeah, I'm liking this team to go over as well. I don't see any drop off at all. If injuries are going to happen, and I think they're well suited, one of the better teams suited to withstand some injuries, even to Halliburton or Siakam. I think they're well equipped to handle that. They don't defend. They do defend the rim well with Miles Turner there. That's one of the things that were positive. They were second in pace and offensive possession length. So they're going to be ripping and running. They have the depth to do that. So I think they'll be able to kind of wear teams down as they go on for 4 quarters. We saw them do a full court press during the playoffs. Obviously, I'm sure they're not going to do that during the regular season, but they did foul a lot, though. That was that they were 30 in their free throw rate defense. So I think they're going to go over. I think this is another sneaky team. I know some people are expecting them to be the, Atlanta Hawks of a few years ago who went to the conference finals and kind of fell off a cliff. I don't think that's the case here. I think the Pacers are going to be a steady team. I can see them pushing for 50 wins.
Yeah, I'm with you. You mentioned how they can wear teams down. That might be why they kind of punt defense, because they know their pace. They are more well-equipped to handle it than other teams. And with the amount of depth they have, they can throw out so many guys that can contribute. Literally. I mentioned the bench before, and I read off the names a couple times. That might be the best bench in the entire league. You could argue Boston is up there, but Indiana's bench outplayed the starters for part of that Knicks series, and Mathurin didn't play. Like, I think that's a phenomenal bench. I think that team can definitely go even 10-11 deep if they really need to. You mentioned the injuries. They survived the Mathurin injury and made the conference finals. We saw Halliburton get banged up midseason. They were trying to let him play games to get to the minimum number so he can make an All-NBA team or qualify for some stuff. But he was injured and he was a non-factor, and they were still fine. I think Indiana's a team that can get through injuries, and I do think that this team has an identity. You might say it's a flawed identity, but it's better than nothing. I like what they've built, and I think that even though Carlisle was a mess in the playoff series against the Celtics, I think that he is a solid coach for this team in the regular season. That's good enough for me. Playoffs are going to win much? No, because I still don't believe you can do much. You could do this playing no defense, but in the regular season, you can pull this off, and I think that they can get to 50. So I'll go with the Pacers over for this win total. I think they'll make the playoffs. The question I have for you, division, do you think 390 is a fair price? And B, do you want to consider putting something on
it? To me, no, because I'm higher on Milwaukee, and I think Milwaukee's price is a little short, to be honest.
Well, the point is, in theory, if Giannis gets hurt and suddenly you have chaos again,
that's
fair. Do you want to put a flyer in Indiana in case maybe something goes wrong for Milwaukee?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I think that's fair. I think anything, it's right. I'm pretty sure you shop around, you can find like 4-1. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's fair. I think a pizza bet or something on that. But I mean, they are deep, and they're one of the teams who can withstand any injury, and that's a positive for me. And like looking at these teams, you want to see who can withstand their star, their secondary guy, their best defensive guy. They can withstand anything happening to those guys. Not just for a game or two, but I think for the rest of the season, which they proved to do with one of their best. I think Ben Mathurin was 6 Man of the Year favorite before he got injured. So that's how well he was playing. And they still kind of countered that and brought guys like TJ McConnell, Nembhard.
I've been a McConnell guy for so long.
Absolutely.
I wanted Philly to play him so much more than they actually did. I was such a big
I bet they do now too.
Yeah. But
yeah, anyways, I think you throw something on there. You can throw something on them.
Okay, well, that's going to segue briefly into the next team, because I was going to ask you a question kind of to segue in. It is the Cavaliers, and they are currently plus 250 to win the division. They are currently in possession of the second highest win total at 48.5, and the make-miss playoffs make is minus 400, minus 900, I mean, and miss is plus 600. The question I have for you, if Milwaukee completely fell apart, either because of injury or Doc Rivers, who would you prefer to bet on to win the division? The Cavs at 250 or the Pacers at 390?
The Pacers, no doubt about it. I don't like this. I don't like this Cavs team.
That's going to segue us into this team. So you like the under on this team, but let's hear your case.
Yeah, so I mean, I just think they are well equipped for the regular season, but they're going to be learning a new system. I just don't think that their lineup works. I mean, Mitchell, Garland, and Mobley each missed 25 plus games. Unless Mobley can take it, and I'm a big Evan Mobley fan. He was really good for my USC Trojans.
Very good in the playoffs too. He was good in that Celtics series.
Yeah, so I mean, unless he can kind of extend to a 4-man that can stretch out, a la Bam Adebayo. And Adebayo's obviously not hitting threes on a consistent basis, but he is reliable to hit from 18, from 20 to keep the defense honest. Right now, Mobley hasn't been able to do that. So his offensive game is taking a hit, which causes teams to pack the paint. And when they pack the paint, Mitchell can't get going. Garland can't get going. And Mitchell is a 3-point shooter. He would prefer to get downhill. But outside of that, I mean, are you trusting what Max Strus, Okoro? Like, I don't trust their wings. They don't have any wing depth at all. We saw that come into fruition even against Orlando. We saw Paolo and Franz have their way. They were just, a couple of bad shooting games away from winning that series, probably in 6 games. And it took a collapse in one of those games for them to actually come back. So, I mean, credit to them for winning the first playoff series post-LeBron era. They play a slow pace. Obviously, all of these metrics from last year were under Bickerstaff, so you got to think that Atkinson's going to come in and change that. They protect the rim well, obviously, but I just don't trust their shooting. They shoot a lot of mid-range jumpers, which is to be expected. I just don't think that this group meshes well. And until they kind of change, I think they're going to sit right where they have been, like the 5, between that 4 and 6 range. And I don't even think, if Indiana plays to the level that I think they're going to play to, I would pretty consistently think they're between 5 and 7 range, playing for that play-in. So I'm under on the team. Love Mitchell, love Garland, love Mobley, but I just don't think that they mix well together for this specific team.
Yeah, so to go through the season last year, they won 48 games. So they finished 1 game back in Milwaukee for the division, which was under this number. Now, the roster looks good on paper, or at least the starters. You look at Garland, you look at Mitchell, Strus, Mobley, Jared Allen. Bench, they got Craig Porter, who I actually like a lot. I thought he was really good the back half of last year. They have Karis LeVert, who I'm not a fan of, but as a bench player, that's fine. You have Okoro, who was the last Woj bomb. That's my new nickname for him, because he was the last guy Woj tweeted about before he ended up retiring. You have George Niang, you have Dean Wade, you have Sam Merrill, and you have Tristan Thompson post-steroid suspension. So the main issue I have with this team is pretty simple. They have no front court depth at all. And we have seen Allen get injured before. We know Mobley got injured last year as he ended up playing, I believe it was about 55 games. He played 50 games last year. Jared Allen was actually healthy. He played 77, which is a pretty high number for Jared Allen, who played 68 the year prior. To go through Jared Allen's games played, 77, 68, 56, 51, and 12. So even if Mobley plays more, I expect to see Jared Allen less based on history. Now, Mitchell did miss a lot of games last year. That was the main, talking point. Garland did miss a decent amount of games as Garland played 57. Mitchell played 55. So the argument is if some of those guys stay healthy, you are in a good position to get to 50. Having said that, you mentioned the coaching change, which is Kenny Atkinson. Now, I ended up watching a lot of Kenny Atkinson as a Nets fan because he was the head coach before he got fired and KD forced Steve Nash to be the head coach. But I do want to point out for Atkinson's time with the Nets, he loved to shoot threes. He was willing to shoot more threes than basically anybody else. And the argument is, will that work with the starting lineup? No. We saw him turn Brook Lopez into a three-point shooter, which helped really just propel Brook Lopez's career for the next 10 years, basically, because Lopez turned into a defensive center who could shoot threes. That was because of Atkinson. Atkinson wanted his guys to shoot. Now, Jared Allen is not an outside shooter. I don't see him becoming one. Is Mobley a good outside shooter? He might be okay, but that's going to probably take a year or two to adjust to the actual concept of shooting more threes. I think Niang makes a lot more sense, honestly, as a stretch 4 with Atkinson's history than with the combo of Mobley and Allen. Now, of course, Mobley is a much better player than George Niang. I'm not saying that he's not, so don't twist my words around. But what I am saying is for a head coach that loves to shoot threes, and you have 2 centers who are not known for three-point shooting, I have questions on how this team will mesh year 1. I think long-term, I like firing Bickerstaff. I think that Atkinson's a good coach. But I like the under on this team. I think this team will take a year or so to gel to the new system. I can see this team struggling early and then maybe figuring it out late. But I like the under on this team. They have a couple of injury-prone guys. Garland's missed some time. Mobley's missed some time. And Allen has missed some time over the years, too. So I like the Pacers more than this team. I agree with you. I think Cleveland will be a playoff team, maybe a play-in team. But I do think Indiana is better than this team. And I think that Indiana has a bit more chemistry right now. Give me Indiana to finish with a better record than Cleveland. I think Cleveland finishes with around 45, 46. I think Indiana can go for a division title, though. So I like the Cavs to go under with you. I like Indiana over. Are we in agreement on those?
I agree. I think you can find it should be markets available to have to have Indiana finish higher or with a better record than Cleveland. They usually post those markets closer to actual like the regular season. So that's something that's intriguing. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I do want to quickly see if I can find the odds to make the play-in, because that was something that I found in one of the earlier episodes, but I don't know if I could actually find it. Can I find it? Sorry, I'm going to try to see if I could actually find play-in. I don't know if I actually can. So that's kind of unfortunate, but I did fine. Okay. So Cleveland to be in the play-in is plus 190. Indiana to be in the play-in is available at, as plus 125. I would actually flip those odds.
Yeah, I would too. Yeah,
I think Cleveland to be in the play-in at plus 190 makes a lot of sense with their injury history. So I don't mind that as an angle, but I think Cleveland will get into the playoffs. I think they can be a play-in team. I like the win total under on this team.
Yep, I agree.
Anything else you want to add?
Nope, that's it.
Cool. I'm moving on to the last team, the team with the highest win total, but a team that has a lot of potential uncertainty based on what happened last year. Milwaukee Bucks. Their division odds are minus 145. Win total is 50.5. Make playoffs is minus 3,000. You have missed playoffs at 13-1. Last year they won the division. It was not easy, and it was I'd say it was a shit show. And they finished with 49 wins. Now for the actual lineup, you're looking at Lillard, Connaughton, Middleton, who missed a decent amount of the season. You have Giannis. You have Brook Lopez. For their bench, DeLon Wright on basically a minimum, which I love the signing. AJ Green, Gary Trent Jr. I don't know how they got Gary Trent for $2.6 million. That is a steal and a half. They got Taurean Prince, who is a veteran that Lakers fans didn't like, but he's a good bench player. And you got Bobby Portis. They drafted A.J. Johnson, who should not participate at all in the rotation because he's kind of a project. Andre Jackson, who was pretty decent last year, still can't really shoot, but we'll see what he does. Beauchamp, they have Terrence Davis, and that's basically it. So for this team, we know last year with Doc Rivers getting hired midseason, it, let's just say, did not work out. And they flamed out in the playoffs. Dame didn't work in this system because he can't guard anybody, and that was a big issue for this team. Now, Giannis and Lillard played 73 games apiece, so pretty healthy season there for Giannis, all things considered. Lillard, of course, averaged 24-plus points per game, couldn't guard anybody, and the shooting percentage was a bit underwhelming for most of the season. Middleton only played 55 games, and that was an injury issue for the start of the season. Looked very good in the playoffs, though, so we'll see if Middleton can actually stay healthy for this season. To mention Giannis' injury history, have to mention his actual games played over the last couple of years, because 73 is actually a decent amount of games. Last couple of years, 73, 63, 67, 61, 63. So usually Giannis misses around 15 to 20 games, and last year he missed about 9. So with Giannis potentially being a bit more injured than last year based on history and based on Lillard being older and him not being a good defender at all, and Doc really not finding a pulse on this team after taking the job midseason, 50.5, you like the over or the under?
I like the over. I love the Bucks this year. I think all things considered, they were underwhelming. They finished underwhelming, but injuries had a lot to do with that. But, I mean, you switch coaches midseason. You got Dame, transitioning. He wasn't in. I mean, if you just read some of the stuff or listen to some of the stuff that he was saying in interviews, he came into the season, I guess, out of shape. I don't want to say fat because obviously that's not proper, but he came in out of shape. He's dealing with a divorce, transferring from different cities, so he had a lot going on. All that's settled now. He got a full offseason with Doc, with Giannis, with these other guys. You mentioned the signing of Prince, Trent, and Wright, which I thought was outstanding. Lakers fans, me being one of them, I like Prince. I just didn't like what Darvin Ham had him do. So I think in a lesser role here, he'll be able to perform better. Hated the draft. I thought they could have did a lot better. I wanted them to kind of get a big, maybe two bigs.
I mean, they had Shannon sitting right there, and they went for the project guy.
Right. And rightfully so. And I thought they should have went with a big. I'm not sure. I think Filipowski was available. I think he kind of could fit.
He went out of the first round, though, I thought. Didn't he go to the second round?
Yeah, you're right. So he was there, obviously. And I thought they could have did some things. Brook Lopez is getting a little bit older. Could have added another, stretch 5 to the mix, a little bit more athletic, open up the lane for Giannis. But yeah, I thought that all things equal, I think they're going to take off and win 54, 55 games. If you just look at the splits from last year's team with Adrian Griffin to when Doc came in, defensively, they got a lot better. They didn't turn teams over as much. They were 30th in turnover percentage defense. They didn't go to the rim as much. They were 25th in rim rate, 4th in three-point rate. So they shot a lot of threes. We can credit that to Dame. Dame shot the worst he shot from deep in like 3 or 4 years. They were 6th in offensive rating, 19th in defensive rating. I think all of that switches up, and I think they're going to be a top 3 team in NBA. I really believe in what they've been able to do as far as add shooting, add depth. If Middleton can stay healthy, I think they can finish with the top seed in the East, man. So I'm liking the Bucks a lot here. They've won 6 straight division titles. I think they make it 7. I'm a big fan of the Bucks this year.
Yeah, so I would just say kind of soured on this team. I just don't know what to really expect in terms of optimism for me, because I don't know if I like this core at this stage in their careers. I don't know if I actually like Doc as a coach. I know in the playoffs I don't. In the regular season, I thought he was okay last year. I didn't think he really did much. You could argue that he actually wasn't that great in the regular season last year. He was blaming equipment managers. The whole thing got weird. It was a lot of weird quotes from Doc. You know what I'm talking about. Point is, though, for the sake of this team, Middleton I like as a player. Can't stay healthy. It's a serious problem. Giannis was healthy for the most part last year. Got injured late, missed a decent amount of the playoffs, and it kind of unraveled from there. Do want to point out for the actual Lillard stuff, he actually didn't play a single playoff game. Sorry, Giannis did not play a single playoff game. So he eventually got injured, but it was a bit later. I don't trust Giannis to stay healthy. I think he misses about 15 games plus every year, and I think that's going to happen again. And Dame is one of the worst defensive guards in the entire league. So I don't really like the idea of expecting this team to win a bunch of games. Now, if they end up looking good, I think Giannis carries them. I think Giannis to win MVP makes a lot of sense. And I see somebody mentioning that. Hawks mentioned it before at 9-1.
Yes, sir.
If I was picking Milwaukee to finish with a top 3 record in the Eastern Conference, I'd rather take Giannis to win MVP, because I think Lillard's best days are behind him. I think last year was pretty up and down for him. The defense was a mess. The three-point shooting was inconsistent. We saw him kind of vanish at times as well in playoff games, and I don't like what I've seen from Dame. I think he's past his prime. I'm not saying he's washed.
Really?
I'm not saying he's washed, but I don't think he's the player he used to be.
Oh, yes.
I just don't see it anymore, and I think that Middleton's a guy who I like a lot, but he can't stay healthy. And with that being the case, I have issues with each of their top 3 guys. So I like the under on this. I'm going with Indiana to win the division. I think Indiana is my favorite team in this division for the regular season. Now, Milwaukee is also caring more about the playoffs. So there's a chance that if Giannis gets hurt, they kind of baby him to make sure that he stays healthy for the playoffs after last year. Milwaukee, could argue, doesn't really care about seeding. As long as they get in, they'll take their chances. So that might result in a bit of an underwhelming regular season record. But I'm looking at the overall roster. Do I think they did enough? I do like DeLon Wright as a backup point guard. I think Gary Trent Jr. is a big plus off the bench. And I do think Taurean Prince is a solid option as well, as basically an 8th or 9th guy. So I do like what they did with the bench. I think they can provide some solid minutes from the bench unit. But I still don't trust Doc Rivers with this team. And I still don't really like the overall, I'd say, makeup of this starting lineup in 2024. I'm just not into it. I feel like the Bucks window, in my opinion, passed, and they're trying to hang on to it. I'm skeptical. I'll put it that way. So I'll go with Milwaukee, finishing with around 48 wins, 47-48. Give me a 4 seed or a 5 seed. But for division, I'm going with the Pacers. I think Indiana is a deeper team. I like what I saw. I think they can cause a lot of problems with their style of play. And they were very good against Milwaukee last year, both in the playoffs and the regular season. So I think that head-to-head could play a factor. Give me Indiana to win the division at plus 390. Give me Milwaukee to go under. I'm not laying 145 on this team to win the division when Giannis misses 15-plus games basically every season. I can't do it. That price is not appealing to me. For value, give me Indiana to win the division at plus 390.
Yeah, man. I guess we oppo because I think 145 is short. But I'm higher on them than you are, so I can kind of understand your thing. But I don't hate the Indiana bit. I do think it's a 2-team race. I don't think Cleveland will be able to sustain what they've been doing, especially in a new system. Unless Evan Mobley, completely transforms his game and he's able to step out and hit from 25, 30 feet.
I'm not saying that Mobley can never figure it out, but for one season changing to like a 6 3-pointers per game guy, that's probably not going to go well year one.
He's got to just get better offensively. He's just not there offensively, and he's had time to kind of get there. But I just think it's just bad. He can't do much because of Mobley. Because of Allen in the paint. I just don't think that team works well together. Garland and Mitchell, whatever they had going on, whether you want to believe the reports or not, and I don't know if you saw it, but Mobley said he told the team not to even draft him. Like it was a mess in the offseason. And I don't think that bodes well going into this season.
Well, I do want to ask you one thing, though, about Milwaukee, because we disagree on this team. We've been agreeing most of the way through, but it seems like we came to a crossroads here. What exactly about this Bucks team do you just expect to click? Is it just chemistry with Doc having an offseason?
Yeah.
Is it Lillard getting his form back? Or is it Giannis just having a monster MVP season, or maybe all the above?
I think it's a mix. I mean, cop-out answer, but I think it's a mixture of all three. But if I had to put like money on one, I would just bank on Giannis returning to that defensive player of the year MVP type of player. He's probably been chomping at the bit to kind of get back. He's got a full off season. I do think Dame, I think the court stuff did affect his play. Whether he wants to admit it. I mean, obviously he said he wasn't making an excuse, but it did take a toll on him. And I mean, obviously he's human at the end of the day. So I can understand that. So I think Dame will be better, and that will, kind of parlay into Giannis just being dominant on both ends. I love the depth around him. So let's just say we're going to have Dame, Giannis, Prince, Middleton, and like if Giannis is at the 5 and Gary Trent on the floor, you got all that space for guys to kind of Giannis dive into the basket. They're going to send 2 at him. He's got Trent on one side. He's got Taurean Prince on the other side. Like I think they can come at people in a multifaceted, different ways to be able to kind of counter what some of those guys are going to do against Giannis. So, I mean, I'm all in on them. But I'm just higher on the fact that chemistry and Giannis just is going to elevate everybody around him.
Yeah, so I'm not going to complain if Milwaukee gets it together because I like watching Giannis play. I think Giannis is a great player, but I just have a lot of question marks with this team. I don't know if Doc's going to work out. Giannis might have injury issues again. We have a pretty good history of it. You're looking at, once again, Middleton, who's battled a bunch of injuries lately. Lillard, we saw last year, looked disastrous at times, and I wonder if that's going to carry over. But I know Lillard's defense is not going to get better. I think he's an atrocious defensive player. He's not Trae Young bad, but he's definitely, as far as I'm concerned, bottom 5 in terms of point guard defense. I just don't trust the overall team to mesh. So I am going to disagree with you there. But for the actual best bet portion of the episode, before we get into the best bet, do want to remind you once again that we are brought to you by BetUS because they've been around for more than 30 years. You can easily deposit using crypto, get lightning fast payouts. U.S. players are always welcome. Sign up and deposit $100 for a chance to win a 1960 Ford Mustang. Use our link to sign up and get a 125% deposit bonus on your first 3 deposits. Go to sportsgamebox.com/BetUS, sportsgamebox.com/BetUS, promo code SGPN, so then we send you BetUS, America's favorite sportsbook. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. A reminder, if you are interested in trying to build your own betting models, Rhythm can help you with that because it's the #1 AI-powered sports betting platform. They also provide bettors of all levels the ability to build custom predictive models in seconds, get predictions on money line spreads, totals, and once again, props. Build your own model, copy one of the top performing models from the leaderboard, or press build a model for me, and Rhythm will give you predictions on every game and player props. Also, a bunch of stats available to you, research and trend analysis to give you more betting insight. And a reminder, claim your $7 free trial today by going to sportsgaming.com/Rhythm, sportsgaming.com/RETHMM. Welcome back, everyone, to the NBA Gambling Podcast. Just finished going through all 5 teams for the Central Division. Now it's time for the best bet portion of the show. Lonte, what is your best bet for the Central Division?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess you probably can just say it's going to be the Bucks, but just that's one of them. I guess my second favorite would be the Bulls under. All the things that we talked about as far as them, A, just not being good enough to win, to go over that win total, and then B, kind of having the incentive to kind of bottom out at the end and play those young guys to see who they can keep and if they can get in the Cooper Flag sweepstakes. So I just think talent-wise, they just don't have enough. I think they'll be able to rebuild on a couple of good drafts coming up. I think GMs and front offices, I think they understand and know that. So I'm going under. I guess 2 best bets, just under the Bulls win total. What was that number again?
The Bulls win total was 28.5.
Yeah, I'll go under 28.5, and I'll go over 50.5 for Milwaukee Bucks.
Okay, so you gave a bonus one, even though I didn't ask you to. I appreciate it. I'm sure the listeners appreciate it too. Do you want to quickly pull up the actual record of the worst 10 teams in the league last year? Because we talked before about how you're going to need to be bad, and they have to be because they have a top 10 protected pick. So they have to be bad. So if you're going through the actual, I'd say, records for the worst teams here, you're going to be below 30. Like, that's a
Yeah.
given. So I do think this team will be tanking at the end of the year. I think we have basically the same lock here. It's going to be either the Pistons or the Bulls. But the Bulls being top 10 protected means they have to be bad. They're going to have to be terrible. And I am going to point out that DeRozan, of course, is out. DeRozan was their best player, second best player, if you want to count Kobe White, who was great at the back half. But you are looking at LaVine. Do want to point out he had a .082 win shares per 48 minutes, which ranked 191st out of 306 players who logged 500-plus minutes. In other words, he was a below-average starter in terms of win shares. And I don't think he's a winning player. I think we'd agree that LaVine is an empty stats guy. He'll get you 25 on inefficient shooting, and he'll take, for example, Kobe White out of his rhythm. He'll take other guys out of his rhythm. He's a classic I'm going to get mine guy and doesn't really understand what he needs to do for this team. Also not a great defensive player. So I'll go with the Bulls with you. Give me the under 28.5 wins. You got to pay attention to the draft pick protections, and with a top-tier draft coming up, the Bulls have to be bad. They started to pull the plug. They finally traded away DeRozan. They traded away Caruso. They probably are going to trade another guy midseason. So keep that in mind. They should sell off, maybe sit some guys. Give me the under. I think they will eventually tank. So that'll be my best bet as well. But for my division pick, give me the Pacers at plus 390 as my choice there. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for the actual Central Division. Lonte, anything else you want to add?
That's it, man. It's great to have basketball back, almost back. We're 3 weeks away, so looking forward to the season, man.
I think we're like 2 weeks away, actually.
Yeah, 2 weeks away. Yeah.
Yeah. So point is, we're going to have a lot of episodes coming up. We have a couple division previews to do. Besides that, we have awards, so we're going to have episodes for that too before the season starts. Until then, find me on Twitter at Reichel Radio. Find him on Twitter at XXLonteXX. Find me on the MLB show. Lonte's on that too. You can find me on the NBA show, WNBA show, which is on the same feed, by the way, as the NBA show. You're also looking at the tennis show, which I do by myself, so check that out as well. Till next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.